Hello everyone, my name is Elijah and today we're going to be doing a lab on how to host a S3 static website using Terraform. Now, if you are a beginner and you have no idea what Terraform is, no idea what AWS is, please go back, watch a couple of videos on AWS, Terraform, what infrastructure as a code is, and what our cloud providers or what cloud is to just give you a general understanding on what it is that we're doing in this lab. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, if you have no clue what any of this is, please do some research before hopping into this video so you have an understanding on what it is that I'm doing. So the reason why I enjoy doing these labs are because a lot of these labs provide um, a chance for you to get hands-on experience with these technologies and not necessarily have to pay for any services that you might spin up on a personal AWS account. So while we're working with this, we're going to use a couple different softwares, one of them being um, Visual Studio Code, right? And I will be going through this step by step. We can go to close this. We don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about any of these. Since this is from the previous lesson, go ahead and close this folder out. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we will need to do is, if you don't have Visual Studio Code installed, please install that. Um, and let's go ahead and create a folder on our desktop named this task 10,002 S3. Okay. Okay, so that's all we wanted to do. Let's go ahead and go back here. Open Visual Studio Code, blah, 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 blah. This is all just kind of telling you how to set it up. But really, all you would need to do is set a folder, right? And then open that folder from here, and then select this right here. So now we are in the folder that we just created. Go ahead and trust the author. Um, and yeah, now we can go ahead and create the variables file. So if you have no clue what AWS is, variables file essentially is assigning the variables for the access key, secret key, region. The reason we do this is because it is not best practice to put our keys directly into our TF files. So we will still be doing that here, essentially for the lab, but there's another way you can go about doing it, and this is kind of how you do it. So go ahead and create the variables.tf file, copy and paste this in here. And all this is doing is describing each variable. So you have a variable called access key here. The description is access key to the AWS console, variable secret key to the console, variable region to the AWS VPC, right? So this does not necessarily mean um, we're not the previously you might look at this and think, okay, you're defining your variables here, you need to set the access key here. That's not necessarily the case, because you will create another TF file, and we're going to go ahead and save this. You're going to create another TF file and name it terraform.tfvars. This is the file that actually has the region access key and all that other good jazz in there. This is where you describe all those actual variables. So let's go ahead and get the access key and secret key from our lab here. And then once you have that in, you can go ahead and save it. And let's move on to the main.tf file. Now, let's go back and describe what it is exactly that we did. So the first thing we did was we created a variables.tf file that assigned these three variables here as a variable here. So when we go to our main.tf file, you guys will see that we are now instead just calling out those variables instead of putting the raw code into our file. And I will show you guys that here. Cool. So let's go ahead and copy the main.tf file. Um, they already created for us, but if you wanted to kind of make one yourself, very easily go to the Terraform site and get all those things from there. But for the sake of the lab, we're going to create another file here and name it main.tf. This is where all of our resources and everything that we're creating here is going to go into here. There is a way you can kind of separate all your resources in different files, but in this case, we're just creating an S3 bucket. Um, and as far as I can tell, we will just be using this one block. I could be wrong, but um, let's continue here. So we're going to go ahead and break it down here. We have the provider block. This is pretty much explaining what it is that we're going to be using. There's other blocks that you can use, like provider, like Git, um, Alibaba Cloud, Azure, but in this case we're using AWS. And you can see the region, access key, and secret key are all using the var dot secret key or the var dot whatever variable that we're calling out here. And what this does is it's gonna go ahead and use the variable that we described here. So it's pulling all these files or all these variables um, and placing it into here. That's all you really need to understand. Now, um, if there was no variable file, then this necessarily wouldn't really matter because there's no actual, this is where you actually define the variable, and this is where you define the value for those variables. Okay, so what this is doing is creating a random string, right? And it'll just be a random string. I'm assuming it's just for creating the S3 bucket. It'll always have like a random name as far as I understand. Um, because the bucket here, if you can see here, the bucket is called Wiz Bucket, and then it's using this resource here, random string, random result. So random string here, and then it'll whatever it comes out, whatever the result is from this, it will place it here. And then force destroy, that's just, you know, force destroy the bucket, destroy it. This is all for the sake of the lab, I'm assuming. So we can ignore that. This is where it really kind of matters. What we're doing is we're setting up a static website. So in this S3 bucket, right, the name of it is going to be blog. And then the bucket, you have the S3 bucket, the bucket ID. Inside the bucket, we're going to place a file and name it index.html. And then the error document, it'll be error.html. These are just, any kind of website will use index.html as the default file it uses to when you visit the website. That is essentially what gets displayed. So here's the public access block public ACLs or access control lists. That's set to false. Block public policy false. Ignore public ACLs false. This is all already set here, so let's not worry about it too much. And little quick description here. In the code above, you're defining the provider as AWS and provisioning AWS resources, including an S3 bucket, by configuring the AWS provider and using a random string resource to generate a unique bucket name. It also sets up the S3 bucket for website hosting and configures public access settings. Okay, so that's pretty much what I just described here. Now we're going to add another block just below the S3 bucket. And this block will upload all the files present under the HTML folder to the S3 bucket. All right. So let's go ahead and copy this and full screen this. Place this here. So this is another resource block. The resource type is an S3 object, and then the name, reference name, usually the local name, is upload object, right? So it has the bucket, has the key, the source. This for each value is defined here as file set HTML. So essentially it'll take the files that are in the HTML folder, all the files that are in the HTML folder, and upload it into S3. Okay. Now, finally, make the bucket public by adding the bucket policy. Sorry. Make the bucket public by adding the bucket policy by add. Okay, that I was right when I read that. That was a weird sentence, but essentially you'll make it public by adding the bucket policy, um, and adding another block of code to the main.tf file. So this is the read access bucket policy that we're going to need to add. We're going to go ahead and add that down here. And let's go ahead and just have a look right here. So the resource, again, the resource block, it has the resource type, which is Amazon S3 bucket policy, and then the reference name. And then you have the bucket ID, right, which is also, if we go up here, where do they define it? Right here. So I believe this is where it's actually set. Bucket, and then it'll take that ID, whatever. Policy is set here, and the ARN is defined. Where is the ARN? ARN is essentially the Amazon reference number. Every object in AWS gets one. I don't actually see the ARN here, but I guess it'll pull it from AWS. Yeah, so it's getting the ARN from the S3 bucket that we created up here, and it'll essentially grant it um, public read get object. So anyone that reaches out to this S3 bucket has public read access on it. Okay. So let's go ahead and save the file. We'll just do Control S to save, and you will create a new folder inside the task file. Let's go ahead here, hit this, and name this HTML. All right, let's go ahead and open that file, and we're going to create two files. One name index.html, and then we're going to create another one called error.html. The reason being, if we go back to our main.tf file, you can see the index document is set as index.html, and then the error document is set as error.html. Those are default, but let's say you change this index to main.html. you would have to set it here, but essentially it'll work the same way. We only use index because it's just the default that usually gets assigned on it websites, right? So let's go ahead and go back into our index file. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and copy um, we actually have to download something here to get our HTML file. And we're just going to open it in Notepad. Okay. That way we can copy and paste it into our own file here. And then we'll go to error and then do the same thing for error. So this is just your average HTML file. You've got doc type HTML, HTML body, heading 1. This is the heading. This is the error file, so it has error 404 page not found. And then in the paragraph, it's a sample error message, blah, 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 blah. All right. So let's go ahead, close this out. We're going to create a outputs.tf file. And this is required for displaying the output as a website endpoint. So let's go ahead, and I believe we're doing this not in the same folder here. So we're going to go back to our task folder, create a new file, and name it, oh, actually, hang on. I'm pretty sure they're putting it in the wrong folder, but I think we can move it. Yeah. So let's go ahead and copy this. And what this is doing is just outputting the website essentially so that we can go ahead and get into um, the static website that we're setting up. Save this, and this will run after we run our Terraform apply. So anything after Terraform apply, like it'll set up the infrastructure, and then it'll run output, and it'll display anything that you set in the output file. So let's see here. Oh, we already have Terraform and all that stuff set up, so let's go ahead and run terminal. And then from here, we're going to run Terraform init because this is a new file. It's going to install the latest versions of AWS and just kind of initialize it. Once that's done initializing, we could go ahead and run Terraform plan. Just waiting for this to finish here. Terraform plan. And you can see here, there's 7 plans. Let's go ahead and run through a couple of them. Let's see. So you can see it will create a S3 bucket. And all of these are already, because it's declarative, um, if you tell it I just want an S3 bucket made, it will kind of have that created and sort everything else out for you. The S3 bucket policy will be created. The access block and everything else here, everything that we described in our code will be created. So now let's go ahead and run. I'm pretty sure we can run Terraform apply now. Yep, we can run Terraform apply. Let's run Terraform apply, and you would have to hit yes. And what that will do is just create all the infrastructure that we specified here. So you can see here, S3 bucket is being created. Again, S3 bucket is the resource type. and then bucket is the name. Um, access denied. Okay, I figured this might happen. Let's see here. Because in order for you to be able to make a policy, you gotta have specific access to it. Um, let's continue anyway. Now let's go back to our code and see what the issue was. Error putting S3 bucket. Put S3 bucket policy. HTTP host access denied. Hang on, let's try it one more time. Maybe because I haven't signed in yet. That could possibly be why. Let's see. Okay, no. It looks like they're couldn't find resource line 43. So let's go to our main. Let's go to line 43. I think it might be. Okay. So I ran a Terraform format. Let's see what the issue was. It's hidden, but um, essentially I just ran a Terraform format. It might have been something as far as like a syntax error. Um, but now that we've had that set up, the output is here. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this into here. And then boom, right here. Welcome to Wiz Labs. And if we go to S3 here, we can find our S3 bucket that we created. This is the one that was created. Access is public. If you go in there, you will see two files that's been uploaded, index and error. And yeah, both of these are publicly accessible. So let's say we want to test our error page. Let's go ahead and do this and do slash home, home.html. And because there's no file called home.html, we will get the error code page not found. So that's essentially it. Let's go ahead and wrap this lab up. I've already validated everything worked in our validation step here. As you can see, we've done all of this here, setting up programmatic access to AWS, creating a public AWS bucket, enabling website hosting on S3, uh, getting that S3 static website URL by using the outputs file, and then accessing the invalid URL by checking by using that home.html um, flag on the end of the website. So that's essentially it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. And also, before you close out, please make sure you run Terraform destroy. Awesome. All right, that's all. Thank you guys for watching.